My fiance, 24 male, and I, 24 female, have been dating for 6 years. He proposed to me a few months ago, which was the happiest moment of my life. We set our wedding date for this December. However, after what happened last night, I'm seriously considering breaking up with my fiance and unsure if I'm an idiot. My fiance, brother, and I were walking back to our car from dinner at a nice restaurant. The car was parked pretty far away and the place was packed, so we had to walk quite some distance. It was late at night, and as we were walking, a person on a bike came to the side of us, stopped, and demanded we give everything we had. My fiancé panicked and just ran away, but my brother, after talking to the man for a couple of minutes, jumped on him, and long story short, my brother kicked his butt. The man had no weapon, it was just a fake one. I called my fiancé after that and told him everything was fine and that we would pick him up. My fiancé still seemed a bit shaken, but I explained everything was alright, and my fiancé thanked my brother a lot. However, I felt extremely weird and disappointed that my fiancé just ran away. I understand it was his natural instinct, but just seeing my brother take the attacker down in comparison to my fiancé just running away, I just feel like I lost a lot of love for my fiancé after last night. I spoke with my brother this morning to get his opinion, and he said I should still give my fiancé a chance, that my fiancé loves me, and that what happened last night was not a normal occurrence. However, I told him I just got a massive ick, and I don't think this ick will ever go. Am I the idiot for considering breaking up with my fiancé? My issue is he ran away and left you behind to defend yourself. If his instinct was to run away, he should have grabbed you to run away with him. Even when my husband and I are out and it's dark, he will tighten his grip on my hand, put his other arm around me, and walk faster while shielding me to keep me safe. Not once has he just left me. Yeah, that part. Did he call the police or get help? Like, where did he run to? He had a flight response, potentially a reflex, but he didn't check on OP, and he didn't go get help. And those two actions, or inaction, speak to the kind of husband he will be. I agree. What if OP's brother hadn't been present? OP, ask your brother what would have happened to you if he hadn't been there and your fiancé had pulled a roadrunner without looking for help. The idea that your partner might turn on you is unsettling. I've experienced the ick you described. It's really difficult to recover from that. OP, he will never have your back. Oh my gosh, a roadrunner. I swear to goodness he was sitting under the bushes scared. What the heck? Whether the change in your feelings about your fiancé makes you the idiot or not, you would not be doing either of you any favours by staying with him out of guilt. You feel what you feel, and your feelings are valid for you, and that's all that matters. I, 37 male, met my sister in a commonly visited city a few weekends back. My wife, 37, came with me, and my 2 kids, a pre-tween female and a young grammar school male. The restaurant was nice, and she asked the waitress to take all of us a picture. And she said, "That's not part of the job," and walked away. I offered to take the picture instead, but she wanted all of us to be in it, so whatever. When the bill came, she snatched it and put a 0 tip over the picture. I would have tipped her cash, but my wife would have told the waitress to give it back, and I didn't want to embarrass her like that. Anyway, when we were driving back to our hotel, I told her that I thought tipping 0 was a bit mean. I mean, personally, I would have just taken the picture, but I guess in the job description, nowhere did it say, "Take pictures for customers." I also said her reaction was a bit over the top. She said that if she didn't want to do stuff like that, working in a tourist city wasn't for her. Before I could say anything back, she put on her AirPods and straight up ignored me. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. I'm with your wife on this one, to be honest. It takes a person about 5 seconds to snap a photo, thus you will probably get a nice tip. Instead, the waitress is a witch. She deserves to be stiffed. We are so auto-programmed to tip no matter what that service and demeanour have gone out of the window with some serving staff. The auto-programming is one problem with the system that allows waitstaff to be paid under minimum wage and have to rely on tips. Tipping becomes less of a reflection of the service and more of something people feel obligated to do. Some folks will say if you can't afford to tip X minimum %, you can't afford to eat out. It's considered part of the cost of service. He seems to be like those husbands who take everyone else's side but the wife. I would have done the same if the waitress answered me that way. I bet he found the waitress somewhat attractive. If he hadn't, I bet he wouldn't have cared. Exactly the last sentence. Making all those arguments about why the waitress is right to act that way, it's weird. Dude, your wife didn't make a scene and didn't call out the server. All she did was decide not to tip due to poor service. That's not over the top. The server was unnecessarily rude about a pretty routine and simple customer request. So yeah, you are the idiot. I, 38 female, and my husband, 41, have been together for 12 years and married for 10. We have a preteen daughter and I want to leave him. The problem is that it's not over anything dramatic, so my family is extremely against it. I'm Korean American, second gen, and my husband is first gen, and in Korea men do zero housework. My friends who are immigrants are shocked any man does any housework. I was raised more in an equal family. My mom and dad are both doctors and both do some of the housework, but my mom definitely does more. I don't live in a huge city for medical school and residency, so honestly my husband was one of about 10 Korean men my age there. My ex was white and I loved him. He was also a medical student at the time, but my parents refused to let me marry him because he wasn't Korean. I really regret it. I married my husband because my parents wanted it, and he was close by and the right age. We don't get along. He was raised very traditional and wasn't expected to ever wash a plate. He is, by Western standards, pretty misogynistic. But life was okay until he was laid off 2 years ago because he was busy, and so I felt like I had to do all the housework. He was in tech but worked on something that had been depreciated, and he had a hard time finding new work. He made 6 figures in his previous role, but now struggles to make the same. We could move, but he refuses to be close to his family. His family really doesn't like me as I'm an emergency room doctor and have calls, so I sometimes can't be home to tuck my child in. He never did any housework before the layoff. Now he still doesn't, but maybe because I let it go for so long, he thinks me wanting him to do it now is me looking down on him now that he isn't working because he sees it as demeaning him. My mother-in-law was a stay-at-home mom her whole life and doesn't believe a career and motherhood go together. However, everyone knows I make most, and now all, of the money, and it makes her hate me because she feels like her son is being emasculated. He feels like that too, so he puts me down for thinking that I'm a bad mother when I go to shifts that require him to be at home with our daughter. I think he might be suffering from depression, but he and his family don't believe in mental health and have yelled at me for suggesting seeing a therapist. The last straw was last weekend. I came home after a conference and the house was a mess. My daughter had only eaten McDonald's and frozen pizzas because my husband refused to cook. I bought all the ingredients and it was extremely simple to make fried rice. I even cooked the rice. Even though I was on for more than 60 hours a week, I did all the cooking, cleaning, and most of the childcare as I picked her up and dropped her off from school. I will admit I was against divorce until my friend divorced. She suffered a pretty toxic marriage for 15 years and divorced 2 years ago. She's now much happier and tells me it's way better than being with her ex. I want to leave, but my family is extremely against it as no one in my family is divorced and it's seen as extremely taboo. They say I will ruin my child if I do, and my parents told me they won't help me do anything if I leave because I'm shaming them. I'm torn, but I can't stand this anymore. I've told my husband at least 4 times I want a divorce, and he just says he has no idea why I want it, even when I spell out in bullet points what he needs to do to make things right. Then he just ignores them and complains. I'm nagging when I point out what he's doing wrong. My mom is always telling me I must not be communicating, but I have many times, and I'm just ignored. Lady, you married him to please your family, which hasn't worked out for you. Now you want to stay with him to please your family. Also, it's not going to go well. Do you want your daughter to think this is normal? You need to model the adult relationships you want her to have. OP is doing more harm to her daughter by staying in that toxic relationship. Kids aren't stupid. They will eventually see how miserable their mother is and how poorly their father treats her. That child will grow up thinking it's acceptable to be treated like a doormat and be forced to marry whoever their family deems fit. OP is already supporting her child and husband, so she's shown that she doesn't need him to be financially independent. So why does she keep letting him live off her and treat her like a doormat? Her life would be so much better without him, and after going low contact with her family. Exactly. You're a doctor. For crying out loud, you deserve to live your own life. Leave. You're clearly a smart, educated woman, and your husband and family don't appreciate that. If your husband felt emasculated, why didn't he go back to school in a subject that would allow him to make the money he was making? He's lazy and a terrible husband and father. Let him go home to mommy and she can wait on him hand and foot. I, 22 male, went to a theme park with my church's youth group yesterday. I'm one of the chaperones and the kids are mostly teenagers around young teen to teen years old. Mostly they're good kids, but they can be a bit rowdy, especially when they're in a big group. While we, 5 or 6 boys and me, were waiting in line for one of the rides, a woman who looked to be around my age, early 20s female, was standing in front of us. She was wearing a tank top and shorts, not even booty shorts, mid-thigh length, nothing outrageous, just typical summer clothes you would see in a mall clothing store. However, some of the boys in our group decided that she wasn't dressed modestly enough, as women in our church typically wear ankle-length skirts and sleeves to the elbow. They started clapping loudly in her ears, making comments about how she should cover up, and even going as far as lightly touching her arm and shoulder to get her attention. One even grabbed her hips. She was visibly uncomfortable but seemed too shocked or scared to say anything. I watched this go on for about a minute, expecting them to stop on their own, but they didn't. It was getting worse and I felt awful for not stepping in sooner. Finally, I snapped and told them, "What the heck, stop harassing her." I didn't yell, but I was firm and clear. They immediately looked shocked and embarrassed, and thankfully they did stop. Later, one of the other chaperones pulled me aside and told me I shouldn't have used that language in front of the kids, saying it was inappropriate and not setting a good example. He said I should have found a gentler way to correct them and that I overreacted. He also reminded me that using swear words is sinful. I don't usually use language like that, especially around kids, but at the moment I was more concerned with getting them to stop harassing this woman. Now I'm second-guessing myself. Maybe I could have handled it better, but I also feel like what they were doing was way out of line and needed to be shut down immediately. Am I the idiot for cussing at them? Clapping in her ears? Why didn't you stop it then? You didn't go far enough. Shame on those little idiots. I'd have gathered everyone and left the park and explained that since they couldn't exhibit the most basic level of respect, they didn't deserve a fun day. And what the heck, that other chaperone? Those kids needed a verbal slap in the face. It was totally appropriate. He wanted you to gently correct literal verbal and physical harassment? Oh, heck to the what the heck no. Sinful? Cussing is more sinful than the actual assault of a woman. Do not second-guess yourself except for the ridiculously out-of-date church you belong to. Women have to be modest around men, otherwise they'll be harassed and assaulted. Join the 21st century, dude. There are plenty of gospel quotes where Jesus gives choice words to men who are intent on harassing women. I like the one where he tells men to pluck out their eyes or cut off their hands if the sight of a woman bothers them. However, you are the idiot, but only because you didn't stop it sooner. My sister, 38, asked me, 26 female, if I would babysit her two daughters, kindergarten and pre-K, while she gives birth to her third child. I told her no because I didn't feel comfortable babysitting them. My sister asked me why, and I told her that the girls were not getting along and all the trouble between them was more than I could handle for an unknown time. I told her nothing would make me more willing to babysit in these circumstances. For those wondering how bad it can be between them, it's bad. Sibling rivalry, or whatever this is, has been awful between them since they started any kind of independent play. They're very mean to each other. They get very loud together because they'll scream at each other and throw things so the other can't play with it. There is no setting where they can get along. My parents had babysat them together, and they told me it was exhausting and none of the consequences for being mean or acting out helped them calm down. My dad said it was like two fighting cats, and nothing short of separating them calms things down. My sister and I went out with the girls before she got pregnant, just a girls' day out. I wasn't even alone with them then, and I felt out of my depth. They fought the whole day, and the oldest says she hates her sister a lot. The youngest is the loudest during any fight or when she's expressing an issue with her sister. The hug-it-out method that my sister and her husband use never works. They refuse to touch at all, let alone hug. They can never find a hired babysitter who will keep the girls for the agreed time. They always get called home early from dates. They've tried over 20 babysitters. My sister is aware of the problems between her girls. She doesn't like when anyone tries to give advice about what to do. So I didn't go into more detail with her when I was explaining why, but she said we needed to sit down and have a more in-depth discussion about my reasons because she wants to try and figure something out, seeing as I'm the best person for the job. I told her we had no reason to have this discussion and that she needed to accept my no and find someone else to babysit. She told me it's too risky to deliver alone because she's always had complicated deliveries. Her husband needs to be beside her and not home with the girls, so I need to talk this out with her and help her. Am I the idiot? Edit, kids are not in therapy at all. My sister and her husband feel the girls are too young for therapy to be involved or needed. Not the idiot. Given sister's unwillingness to listen to any advice, I'm willing to bet she's expecting kid number 3 to be the magical cure for these sibling issues. Even if that's not the case, I feel terrible for that kid. I want to laugh out loud, but there are kids involved. Your sister sounds like she's intentionally being blind here. I'm so sorry. I think she has a parenting paradigm in mind, and it sounds like some crunchy crap given the hug it out mention, and she's way too deep into the ideology to accept that it's simply wrong. Admitting it's wrong means admitting her entire belief system could well be wrong, and that's really hard for people to do. Sadly, by the time your sister and her husband think the girls are old enough, there will be entrenched problems, both psychological and behavioral, and it will be too late. Still, not the idiot. Not your kids, not your problem. Being honest and upfront that you can't handle them is better than burning yourself out for other people's problems. They need to hire 2 babysitters and engage the kids separately.